Today, I'm going to share our experiences with homeschooling while traveling. Welcome to Sarah Still Teaches, a place where we get real about the education of our children. If you're looking for more educational content, be sure to hit subscribe. When we decided to start homeschooling, one of the biggest benefits of homeschooling for us was the ability to travel whenever we wanted to. We no longer had to work around the schedule of the school. We could go when we wanted to and take school with us. Or so I thought. Our first big trip was in February, only a month after we had started homeschooling. We hadn't been back to South Carolina to visit our family since we moved to Colorado, and we had this opportunity of an extended period of time, so we felt like it was time to make a trip back. And what better way to experience the coast than camping on the beach? So I wanted to stay really disciplined and continue doing school while we were on this trip because my teacher brain said we have to do school. We're going on this trip, but that doesn't mean we can just take a break and enjoy everything we're doing there. We need to still do school in order to stay disciplined and stay in these routines. So I did a lot of prep work beforehand and had a folder with all of our work and what we would be doing, and I had planned out 2 weeks worth of work since that's how long we'd be gone, and I felt really good going into the trip that we were gonna keep doing school. We'd do it at the picnic table, at the campsite, or maybe we could do school on the beach. In my mind, I had this utopia picture that we were just gonna keep trucking and have this vacation all at the same time. The reality is, that's not always the case. We didn't touch that folder the entire time we were there. What we did do was we talked about the lighthouse, the history of the lighthouse, how the beach has changed over the years due to erosion. We talked about the creatures that we encountered on the beach and just living in the low country. And so our children got new experiences and they learned. It just wasn't from the paper and pencil that I brought with us. Since we were visiting family on our first trip, I thought it would be an anomaly in our homeschool and traveling journey. However, that wasn't the case. When we went to Moab in April, we decided we'd bring school with us again. So I spent time planning school for the week. I packed everything up in that trusty folder again. I had colored pencils, I had all of the things planned and ready to go. I packed it away in our backpack and it stayed there for a week, untouched. So why did this happen again? Well, Moab has so much to offer. There's so many things to do, and it's such a cool place that when we would wake up in the morning and eat breakfast, we decide what we would want to do for the day, and school just wasn't one of those things. Taking the time to sit there and do the school that we had brought with us just didn't feel as important as experiencing and learning from the area that we were in. So what did we learn in Moab? Well, we did a lot of hiking, so there was a lot of physical activity involved every day. And so we talked about being in the desert and the need for water and staying hydrated because it was so dry in Moab. We also talked about some of the dangers and hazards of Moab, flash flooding, rattlesnakes. We did a lot of research about the rattlesnakes that live in Moab. We were curious and wanted to make sure we were doing some research as to what predators we might encounter while in the area. That's always something important to us, is knowing what hazards we might run into and being prepared to mitigate them. So we wanted to talk to the kids as well about what we needed to be careful of and what we needed to watch out for. It was amazing to see the erosion that had happened from previous flash floods. So we talked to the kids about what happened to those areas and why they were so washed out and why that happens in the desert. And so they learned about flash floods and erosion as a result of it. And we also talked about staying on the trails while hiking so that we're not expanding these trails, and we'll be able to preserve these areas for people to use in the future. It would be a shame if everyone just went wherever they wanted to and these trails eventually were closed and we couldn't experience them like we were able to during our trip. While in Arches, we talked about the Ute Native Americans and the petroglyphs that they left behind. That was an amazing thing to see and experience. We talked about the roots of that word and vocabulary. We dissected a lot of vocabulary. There was a lot of Google happening while we were on our trip, talking about different roots that were involved in some of the words, especially when you're talking about the rock formations and why they wash away in the way that they do at the base to leave an arch. There was so much reading. There were informational stands all throughout Moab explaining what you were looking at, how the rocks were formed, why there were so many dinosaur feet print in one area. And so we did a lot of reading informational text about what we were looking at and why it was there. One of our favorite places was the Copper Ridge dinosaur tracks. It's amazing to stop and think that this area was once underwater. And we have the same thing here in Colorado. Our area was once underwater. We have a lot of dinosaur fossils and things here in Colorado, but Moab is very similar in that aspect. They were also underwater, and so this area where the dinosaur tracks are was believed to be a shoreline where they would come to feed. And so it was amazing to learn these things and to see the feet print, and it just felt like we were on another planet. The rock formations, the giant holes filled with water. It was an amazing experience. And the kids learned so much from the land and the history of the land. We also learned about settlers at Wolf Ranch there. They came there after the Civil War. They had cattle. It was just a lot of information about what we were seeing and experiencing. And so I felt like we were doing school, just in a very non-traditional school way. As we drove home from Moab and I reflected on our experiences and what we learned while we were visiting, I felt like those experiences were more rich and will be long-lasting for our children than sitting down and doing paper and pencil work that I had packed up from home. That work we can do when we get home. We'll make the time to make that up. But that travel opportunity isn't there every day, and it's not something that we routinely experience. When we start traveling in the future, I want to plan what can we learn from the area we're in versus packing up the schooling we're doing at home and bringing that with us. I wish someone would have said, there's so many opportunities when you travel to learn, and you don't have to bring that paper and pencil school with you. It's okay to break outside of the box of that traditional mindset for school and teaching. So I hope when you're planning your next trip, you take all of that into consideration and think about how can you learn from this trip versus packing a backpack full of schoolwork from home.